it's been. Okay. So my title today is Ethics, Importance of Biomedical Ethics, a Historical and Philosophical Overview, because I think going straight, many of my colleagues today hopefully will discuss on the clinical research itself, but actually underlying this ethics of clinical research, there are certain issues, ethical principles, which are very important to understand for practice as well as for research. So I'm not limiting to practice, but many of the research, but many of these will go to practice as well and research as well. Let us come to certain burning issues in the present era for COVID-19 era. For example, you have we all know that in India, Bangladesh, or in many of the countries, almost all of the countries excepting few, we have a scarcity of ICU beds. So one bed is available, and now there are two candidates. A young patient with no comorbidity, obviously he has more chance of living, and an old one who has comorbidity, having more probability of dying. Actually, they have come at the same time, they have same right on the ICU bed. How do you decide? If you go for law, there's no law supporting this. Now, one may question that the old person will die in any way. If you can, prefer the young one, he will be living. But on the other hand, it may seem immoral or inhuman. There are so many issues like this where the caregivers are at a loss. No law can help. It is only decisions or some kind of guidance or rules or regulation, not rules, but certain guiding principles which can help. But sometimes you have to decide on your own. For example, during the initial period of COVID, many physicians did not attend their patient, did not go into contact of their patient, particularly senior ones. You may question that they have violated their duty, but at the same time, they have a right to live. Every human being has a right to live. Now, what is the really, no law can punish them. Actually, this is a very delicate issue. For example, we know that everybody is revolting in the Western world, and many people are revolting against use of mask, mandatory, or even vaccine. I've forgotten to write that. That is a very big question in many, many countries now. You have seen big demonstrations and oppositions. Moral law cannot determine that sometimes. You may impose law, but people may go to the Supreme Court for violating their basic rights. Shortcut development of vaccines. We have seen that many classical stage, phase 1 or phase 2 can be skipped, straight going to third phase. Is it ethical? And also certain privacy and autonomy. For example, the patient should not, identity should not be discussed disclosed in a medical research or medical practice. But at the same time, sometimes for public good, you have to mark a house with a red flag so that people can be aware that somebody is there who can be infectious for the whole community. So all these things, sometimes law cannot help. And in this process, when you go for further development of ethics for clinical research in Ayurvedic or whatever is the medical system, you have to go to certain basic questions, and those questions are ethical questions. Those are not legal questions. And that's why we are coming to the point of ethics. What really ethics do in a society or in a community? It is a formal study of right and wrong. It is the study of the basis of principles for deciding right and wrong, and the analysis of the processes by which we decide what is right and what is wrong. So these are dealing with principles, this is dealing with process, and in fact, it is a philosophical discipline. So unless we really a little bit understand the philosophical questions about moral problems, and we deal with the art of living, so it is a fine balance it is not a very black and white issue that the pendulum is somewhere here. It is sometimes a very delicate issue to deal with this art of living and to decide. So it is not ethical issues. Actually, when there are conflicting values, rights are not being respected, fairness and justice really we are concerned with, and when we are unsure of what we should do and why we should do, that is the principle of ethics comes there. In fact, in life, there are questions of black and white, whether I should cheat or in exam or not. Very black, we should not cheat. Should we give organs for dying patients? Okay, should we do that? Should we take unethical money from a pharma company? These are very straightforward questions. You don't have any problem. But the problems which I started in the beginning, those are not as straightforward like this. We have to really sometimes good and better, better and best, and what is really better and what is really best, we don't know. It is not a villain and hero question. It is sometimes a hero and a different kind of hero, and it is very difficult sometimes. So ethics actually deals with the principle, moral and philosophical questions. Morality is a personal issue mostly, and that's how we come to the question of ethics when we deal with biomedical research ethics. In fact, then, although it sounds sometimes difficult for medical practitioners, but I would request you to really go a little bit through the ethical theories, and in fact, ethics should be taught in all medical disciplines. Unless certain basic principles are known, it is very difficult sometimes to follow really the ethical issues in medicine, even in research. So actually, there are three broad types of ethical theory. One is called consequentialist theory. This is primarily concerned with what will happen if we take a particular action. For example, in our example, if we don't take the old person with comorbidity, he is supposed to, most probably he or she will die. But there are also non-consequentialist theories that irrespective of what happens as a result, sometimes actually the intention of the person is the main decision. It is not the consequence. It is the intention of the particular action. And there are third theories, which are called agent-centrist theories, more on individuals, ethical status of the individual. So there are three broad types of theories. Let me go a little bit into the consequentialist theories. And the first is the utilitarian approach, egoistic approach, and common good approach. In the utilitarian approach, actually, we have heard so many times that is the basis of democracy, modern democracy. When we say that, greater happiness for the greater number of people, we have, many of the people, many of the times we have heard that what is democracy? Greater happiness of the greater number of people. And actually, that is coming from the utilitarian approach. Modern democracy is mostly based on utilitarian, based on John Stuart Mill's a famous book called Utilitarianism. And their happiness, everybody has the right to go for happiness or pleasure and avoid pain, but the principle is greater happiness for the greater number. That is one kind of approach which is followed by modern democracy. Egoistic approach is more self-centered basis, and common good approach is we should work. That is coming from Plato, Aristotle, and Rousseau, that the general will of the people, that should be respected, and common good, it is not the greater number, but all community, common good is the most, desirable action. If we go for non-consequentialist, because here in three approaches, everywhere there is a measurement of the utility, that means good or bad, and then what is happening at the end, that is the main, whether the patient is dying, whether the infection rate is improving, that is the more important issue. But in the non-consequentialist theories, duty-based approach, rights-based approach, fairness or justice approach, and the divine command approach, This is irrespective of what is happening at the end. I have a duty, so I have to look at the patients. Even if I die, that is the duty-based approach for a physician. Those who believe in duty-based approach, they will say, even if you die as a physician, you have the right to defend the patient, take care of the patient. In fact, Immanuel Kant is really the father of this, and he coined a term called categorical imperative, which means in simple terms, what I want to do for myself, I would like to do it for everybody as an universal law. So as a physician, as a patient, I would like to have the treatment of physician during even COVID. So every physician should do like this. So this is a duty-based approach. And a right-based approach is different, because in right-based approach, that humans have a right for dignity. Every human has a right to get whatever. And now it has been expanded to animals and non-humans, such as even robots have the rights, some people are asking. Even nature have the rights. So this is a right-based approach. So this is not based on consequence, but rather predetermined right that can be converted to law. And another is the fairness or justice approach. This is coming from Hammurabi in Mesopotamia, and right now this is propagated mainly by John Rawls and Professor Amartya Sen from India. He is the disciple, the best disciple of John Rawls. Actually, he is the most important proponent of fairness or justice approach, although it is very close to the democratic value of utilitarian, which I said earlier. But here, some people must be privileged. For example, in vaccination, in COVID, for example, the deprived people or most vulnerable people should be privileged. This privilege is sometimes, some people may ask, why? If I am young, I'm 25 or 30, why should not I get it? Why should a person from 60 years of age should get a privilege? Because in this approach, that is not justice. Justice, fairness is sometimes going for partiality for certain people, some preference, not partiality, but some kind of preference or priority. And that priority, for example, in economic terms, Amartya Sen and Rawls' approach is, for example, if women are historically deprived, they should get privilege in education and job, unless the equality, it is their main concern is to get the initial situation of equality first. So unless the initial situation of equality between tribes, between gender is coming, the preference or priority to individual groups or individual people is justified. So this is the fairness or justice approach. And if you take this approach, then you have to think about the COVID-19 management and prevention in a different way. That is, you see how the basic principles go into practice. Now, another approach is the divine command approach. Actually, in divine command, you don't look at the consequence. You don't look at the prior justice or other theories or even the rational theories. You go for what is written in the scriptures. So if you believe in certain religion or certain divine books, that should guide you. That should guide you because it is a command, it's God's command. Ethical standards are created by God, and following God, you can really go for the definition of what is ethical and what is non-ethical. And since God is omnipotent, he knows about the future, he knows about the free will. So God can change time to time his will, and he can change about the ethical definitions. Now you can see with so many approaches, you have to decide. I am not deciding right now. I am not a person who can decide at this moment, but where is the Ayurvedic ethics, Ayurvedic medical ethics practice? How it is mixed with so many approaches. Maybe one ethical practice may not be a single approach. It may have different approach, because in a medical system, you can have some divine command approach mixed with certain kind of justice approach and certain kinds of even utility approach. But the most important thing is that we should be very clear about what are the approaches or what are the mixture of approaches we are taking when we are taking decisions. in a medical practice or research system. This is very, very important to understand. And here, maybe only practitioners may not be enough. Just practitioners may have certain kind of limitation in understanding. You need philosophers, you need ethicists, you need applied even history. I'm in favor. And only a few days back, I was giving a lecture in an Indian or mixed webinar on history, and I propose that there should be applied history to decide on all these things. So this is a very basic principle. And there are other third approach. I said there is an agent-centered theories which are not very usual in our part of the world. I am so skipping some of these, but they are very, very important in certain Western countries. The virtue approach and the feminist approach, because in the virtue approach also there are arguments which is coming from the time of Aristotle, and particularly in China, in Confucius' time, this is very, very important. And there is a feminist approach which is also very important. Now we are coming to a second, issue. There have been ethics is everywhere, in a professionalism, in self-regulation, in education, and one part is medical ethics, because there are many others, ethical issues. And so, what is really medical ethics? It's a field of applied ethics and the study of moral values and judgments as they apply to medicine. It is a scholarly discipline and actually practical application in clinical settings. But as I said, it needs little bit of history, it is understanding of philosophy, theology, even sociology and anthropology. It has a long history. In fact, even 1700 BC, we get in the third dynasty in the Pharaoh time, we get medical ethics. And in Oath of Hindu Physicians, in Buddha's Oath, in 15th century BC, we get also this kind of medical ethics, and Hippocrates, of course, and many others. So I'm not going to the historical details. In modern times, in fact, it started with the World War, because there were so many misuse of medical experimentation during the World Wars. So there was a Nuremberg Code after the Second World War. That is the first, written statement in the modern era. And then there was World Medical Association Declaration of Geneva, which has been updated, and also American Medical Association. And we are more, in clinical research, we had Declaration of Helsinki updated, Belmont Report, AMA revision, etc., etc. Now, I'm coming to the point that we should now go beyond medical ethics, and we should go to biomedical ethics or bioethics in short, because these are not identical. Medical ethics, though that focuses primarily on issues arising in practice of medicine. But practice of medicine, unless we go in understand in a broader way in terms of bioethics, where all biological sciences and actually certain, traditional values of medical ethics is surpassed. In fact, that is expanded. We really don't solve the problem of ethics in medical practice and research. So this is a branch which studies the philosophical, social, and legal issues arising in medicine and the life sciences. Here I may differentiate between ethics and law, because some people confuses that what is ethics and what is law. Because law is binding, legal issue binding, because then you have to go, you can go to the court and then get punishment, get reward. But in ethical issue, it is not really as binding as law. It is sometimes a hazy area. And this is chiefly concerned with human life and well-being, and it treats ethical questions, even non-human biological environment. That is another very important point, because we have exploited the environment in such a way, we have created a climate, damage or catastrophe in such a level, we have damaged the biological environment in such a level that now we have to go beyond human, terms. We have to go to, in fact, even non-human environment to really come to a meaningful ethical application of medicine or other systems of living. So I have already given some examples, but there are more examples. Sometimes Actually, we have problems between family and clinicians, whether we should give a patient to ICU ventilator or not. There is no really choice between family members and clinicians sometimes get into dispute. Sometimes it is living at risk, whether we should get what kind of forms of care, should we go for operation or not? Should we go for certain kind of lifestyle practices or not? And in fact, sometimes determining the preference is not clear. So we have what we should do, why we should do it, and how we should do it. All are bioethics. And in fact, recently this has become a very important area of biomedical discipline and health disciplines. And here as I have said, it is not only science, but you need philosophers, sometimes theologians, because the religion or values and customs are very important. And I think we have to go for an emphasis on individual autonomy and rights. And also, there is a suspicion of medical paternalism. What is that? Because sometimes doctors are dictating too much on the patients, and the patients or the consumers have no voice in discussion of medicine, because medical paternals they are like gods, demigods, and medical persons dictate whatever they like to do with the patients. And the individual research participant and patients, they have to be part of the research, otherwise research will not be successful. So the basic principles are, in fact, that we will not do harm to the patients, but this is also sometimes, a matter of decision between harm benefit analysis in utilitarian theory. For example, when we have been experimenting in the beginning of the COVID-19, some vaccines, really this basis was not very sound. In fact, there was a possibility of harm. Still, in fact, in certain groups of patients, in fact, in younger patients, we don't know really all the data about harm or benefit. But in utilitarian view, there is a view that yes, we should analyze the harm benefit, and whatever data is available, we should decide something. But for example, in Republican theory of USA, they say, no, we cannot do any harm, so we don't take this risk. So there are many, so the standards about even non-maleficence and beneficence are not very clear. It has to be decided locally. It has to be decided in India on the basis of their reality. It has to be decided on our reality and autonomy, justice. Everything has to be decided on certain kind of general principles, but also taking local reality into consideration. And the approaching of ethical issues has two aspects. One is non-rational, one is rational. Non-rational, that means not irrational. And in non-rational, obedience. For example, the child should obey their fathers, or we should obey their teachers. There should not be much question. These are non-rational. Imitation, we should imitate a role model. For example, sometimes we say for health, we call the models from the cinema. And they are popular, so we imitate them. So this is sometimes the imitation of the role models. Sometimes we have intuition, my mind is telling that. And sometimes there is a habit. All these things are important in life because people are not always guided by rational choice. Sometimes these are very important, and this has to be cultivated. If you feel, for example, we have certain examples, those physicians who are more cultured, who are gone through literature, who has gone through music, who has, who are really cultivating some cultural issues, they have more human feelings. They have more feelings for other person. They can sacrifice a little bit more than people who are very hardcore, just professionals. So non-rational part is very, very important, and that can be cultivated only by certain culture, certain values, certain ethics, certain philosophical principles. On the other hand, you have very clear rational approaches, because then first thing is that we need to have some well-founded rules. Some rules can be converted to laws. some rules may not be converted to laws. Rules can be a little bit flexible. For example, the Ayurvedic societies or Ayurvedic, when Ayush goes for a rule formation, that is a rule. But there are many other organizations, like the organization of Dr. Pawan Sharma. They can go for certain rules, which may not be binding, but those rules can be binding to their members. And we can see the consequence of those on the utilitarian basis, whether that is bringing greatest good for the greatest number. We can have certain principles, we can have certain virtue ethics, all these can be combined. So we need to identify the problem. We need to have developed the alternative courses action, and we need to actually select on alternative courses action. But as I said, there is no black and white for the ethical principles. Sometimes these are hazy, and consider objections to alternative selected objections. All these principles can be detailed, and I leave this slide with the organizers. You can take that because there are so many internal issues in each section, in each choice. So what we should do as a framework, that we have to determine whether the issue at hand is an ethical issue or legal one. Then consult the authoritative sources to see how physicians generally deal with such issues. Consider alternate solutions. Discuss your proposed solution with those whom it will affect, because the ultimately sufferers will be the patient or people with whom we are doing research, or who are going to be benefited. Make your decision and act on it. Evaluate your decision and be prepared to act in future. Because if we think that this is not correct, we should change our course of action. So we have ethical theories, ethical principles, and ethical rules. There are different levels, and we have certain maxims. If we follow certain maxims, general guidelines, which are normally actually based for rules, formation of rules, we have to respect the autonomy of individuals, because every individual is different. We cannot just brand them as a group all the time, and there should be no harm principle, benefiting others, and justice, and be faithful. So we have structural codes, regulative codes, protective codes for public opinion, and regarding membership, some specific rules and certain obligations. And in modern times, we have codes, as I have mentioned. There is a World Medical Association, United Nations Principle, WHO is making rules even in COVID situation. And we have to go for certain kind of literature hunting before certain bioethical principles should be integrated. And now many people's question, because when I have given such a long lecture and you were very kind to hear me, many people in developing countries make some exclamatory remarks. Why should we study medical ethics in a developing countries like India and Bangladesh? Why should we do it? Because not only in our country, but even in developed countries, people are sometimes quite critical why we should study or we should discuss medical ethics at all. Because the arguments are like this. As long as the physician is a knowledgeable and skillful clinician, ethics doesn't matter. Because the physician will decide whether whom to give an ICU bed during this period, whether he should give it to an old person or a young person. Let him decide. Why should we go for certain principles? We don't need that. And particularly in developing countries, these are luxury. We should not talk about this. Then another argument is that ethics is learned in the family, not in medical school. There is no general discussion. There is no, conclusive decision. So why should we go for a school learning? It is a family issue. Sometimes in family, we learn from religion, some from elders. And some people argue that medical ethics is learned by observing how senior physicians act, not from books or lectures. That we will observe how Professor B.P. Sharma handles a case, handles a situation, and we will follow that. So that is another type of argument. Why should we hear from you? And ethics is important, but our curriculum is already too crowded and there is no room for ethics teaching. That is another argument that, okay, we are learning so many techniques, so many science, so many issues. So on the top of this, learning bioethics is a burden and we should not really go for it. That is another type of argument. But actually, this is not true. In developing countries, we need more of this. In fact, scarcity is more here. I know we need ethical principles, and sometimes laws are very hazy here. Laws are insufficient. Laws are outdated. We are in Bangladesh and India, we are dealing with laws from British era, even 1860 code, 1870, and it sometimes seems so outdated that it does not fit in this period, but we are dealing with those kind of laws. So now we have to also have quick ethical principles, and it is an essential component of medical practice from the earlier days, and it should be updated always. And it is a principle basic to the physician-patient relationship or researcher-subject relationship, and it should be application specific in a specific problem, and we have to, however unpleasant, we have to deal with it. And study of ethics actually prepares medical students to recognize difficult situations and to deal with them in a rational and principled manner. And particularly those who are interested in research, they must be well taught in bioethics, because otherwise they will not do any ethical research. And in fact, now from the time of Hippocrates, as I said, it is as a profession also. Some people can take bioethics as a profession. And recently regarding human rights, it is so much hue and cry. We should go to this. And it is closely related to law. Law cannot be formulated correctly unless certain ethical principles are followed first. So, and sometimes a physician may have to challenge a law, because in certain situation, law may not be compatible with ethics. And he may have to challenge a law and change the law of the country. Certain times of individual experience can change the law of the country. And that is a heroic work. And sometimes people follow that. So I've just come to the last part of my lecture, that ethics is very, very important, and not medical, but bioethics is very important in our settings, even in developing countries. And we need correct, proper internal review boards or ethical review committees in every organization who are involved in medical practice and research. And we need various committees and councils on bioethics in the national level and the regional level and the state level in India. And also we need independent citizens oversight committee, which is I think the organization which Dr. Pawan Sharma is doing. This is a very important component. If we want correct decision making on ethical principles, we need oversight with the independent citizens, because however state control or government control mechanisms are there should be independent citizens committees. And in fact, particularly in COVID-19 era, this has become very, very important, because sometimes you have to take rapid decisions, sometimes you have to take breakthrough decisions, sometimes you have to take very, very hasty, which is contradicting the traditional ethical principles. And in fact, WHO has come with the latest guidelines also regarding this. The rest of the part will be mostly from the WHO guideline. I'm not going through details, but I'm leaving the slides, and you can go also to the original guideline. But the COVID-19 has, created renewed, call for rapid and time-sensitive reviews that must be facilitated. Because sometimes it is overnight, we have to decide about the fate of a vaccine. We have to decide about the device for oxygen delivery, and we have to decide about what happens for a new drug. So this is a very, very important point, that we have to be very fast, very time sensitive, rapid review process in research. And sometimes we have to be able to skip steps. And that means there is a checklist which WHO has given. And I'm not going through the details, but there are really very good checklists with 20 points, and you can get it through this. So I'm here, there are very nice points. So now I'm the last slide. The very important issue is that in Ayurveda, in fact, this is can be a role model for modern biomedical research practice. Why? Because uh, as I know it, as from my limited knowledge on Ayurvedic medicine, this is a holistic approach. This is the principle of bioethics, what I have told, what medical profession is learning in this century, that not medical ethics, but we have to learn bioethics. That is already integrated in Ayurvedic medicine, because this had a holistic approach. In this system, patients were not viewed as individuals, because in modern medicine, we are treating sometimes only one patient, even not the whole patient, but an organ or even a particular organ. We are operating an eye or operating a finger, not and even the whole hand or whole GI tract or even the whole body. Or sometimes we are treating only the heart, not the overall human being, and not to be in question his family background or his social background. Very rarely we are treating. And even during research, we are sometimes ignoring all the comprehensive factors which is affecting that human being. Sometimes we are reducing it to by statistics only, not with the human values. So many factors are left out in human biostatistics because of the nature of the confounding variables and the limitations of the statistical evaluations. So when Ayurveda treats patients, they never thought them in isolation. They actually thought in terms of therapeutic agent, diet, and lifestyle altogether. The prescriptions or suggestions from the Ayurvedic physicians traditionally was not limited to a drug or therapeutic agent. It was combination of diet, and not only diet but lifestyle. But on the top of this, that was not only individual, but it was a physical and spiritual well-being, which is now the modern definition of health. And that took care about their values, about their beliefs, about their social interactions, and not only for the human being, not only within the family or society, but they took into nature into consideration. That is very important. What I have told in the beginning, that bioethics not only deals now with the human beings only, they deal with the nature, because we have exploited nature too much. And that is one of the root cause of the modern, curses which the human beings are facing. And we will continue to face unless we restrain our action. We will continue to face in future such kind of catastrophe as COVID-19. But in Ayurveda teaching, actually there was a living with nature, and Ayurvedic many physicians lived close in conformity with nature. They found the solutions of health in nature. So this is very, very important for the modern, medicine to be learned. And I think Ayurveda sometimes is forgetting this traditional ethics. Many of the Ayurvedic practitioners are thinking in terms of the modern practitioners. They are mixing this philosophical. I'm not against mixing the knowledge, mixing the science, mixing the technology. But ethics, I think so far ethics is concerned, modern medicine is too individualistic, too microcentric, but they have to learn. But Ayurvedic physicians should not imitate in ethical terms the modern physicians, which is too microcentric. I think they should not forget this traditional Ayurvedic ethics. And I think modern medicine should learn many things from these holistic ethical principles. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think I have not given a typical lecture on clinical research, but I hope that you will find certain recipes when you are thinking about applying this research ethics in biomedical research in Ayurvedic. I think from my presentation, I hope you will get certain recipes which will which will be useful for you to design your ethical principles. And also, as I said, not only formal legal regulative committees, but also oversight the public committees for civil society committees. And again, I would say that particularly the modern medicine, as I said, that they should integrate many of the ethical principles, especially in the context of the lessons taught by COVID-19. COVID-19, as I started in the beginning, has taught us that we should not be overconfident on our discoveries on science and technology. We need to make science and technology with human values, certain ethical principles, and go forward for the future of the human being in a sustainable way. And whole universe, whole civilization is dependent on human, non-human interaction. We should think the universe, and whoever, in whichever, some people may think that Brahma is living everywhere, or say supernatural being is living everywhere. That is one type of belief which is should be respected. But on the other hand, even if you don't believe in all these things, you have to understand, you have to believe in the unified future of the whole universe, where humans being are placed. And COVID-19 has taught us this, is teaching us this bitter lesson, that unless you understand this, the whole economy, the whole social cohesion is going to collapse, and the civilization in the verge of, uh, disruption or collapse, which has happened in the past. So again, with these few words, I would like to thank you very much. As I said, that this is a very important webinar, in my opinion, in the very timely webinar, because we have to rethink, the humans beings should rethink, the physicians should rethink, the individual systems of medicine should rethink about their ethical basis, and they should try to combine hands for having a human ethical principle, and for the benefit of the humankind. With this, I would like to declare this webinar inaugurated, and I would like to thank the chief guest and all other guests, and again to Dr. Pawan Sharma and Dr. Vishnupada Sharma for inviting me for this very important meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure listening to you, and you have enlightened us so much about the ethics, which not only about medical ethics, the bioethics, and also we have learned that we should respect the nature, because above all, nature is important, and if nature doesn't persist, we will not be able to survive in this universe. So again, Lekha sir, we are very much thankful to you to giving us this knowledge and enlightening us about ethics. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
So without any delay, now let me introduce our chief guest for the today's webinar, Dr. Yogeshwar K. Pandit. He is, assistant professor in SSSB Ayurved College, working as a medical officer in Rajasthan for 10 years, but currently is the assistant drug controller of Rajasthan. We welcome you, sir. We welcome you on this webinar. And if you can please just, give us a little speech over the clinical trials and good clinical practice and ethics in good clinical practices, we would be very humble. Dr. Yogeshwar.
Thank you.
Sir, चरण स्पर्श हो गए. So you need to take your front camera on. This is the back camera, Dr. Yogeshwar.
Sorry.
No, it's okay, sir. It happened.
Thank you, sir. सभी को मेरा नमस्कार. मैं हिंदी में बोलूँगा. आज जयपुर में थोड़ा सा मौसम ऐसा है, रात से बारिश हो रही है और वाईफाई वगैरह चल रहे हैं, तो मैं मोबाइल में लेकर के बैठा. चलिए शुरू करते हैं. सबसे पहले तो आप सबको नमस्कार। और इंडिपेंडेंट रिसर्च एथिक्स सोसाइटी का ये 186th वेबिनार है। इट्स वेरी ग्रेट। डॉक्टर पवन कुमार शर्मा जी और हमारे जो होस्ट हैं डॉक्टर परीक्षित जी, इनका भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। इन्होंने मुझे इस मंच पर बोलने के लिए यहाँ पर इनवाइट किया। अब रिसर्च की अगर हम बात करें तो प्रत्येक शोध को कुछ विशेष प्रश्नों के लिए डिजाइन किया जाता है। कुछ हमको आंसर्स चाहिए होते हैं कुछ क्वेश्चंस के। उनको इस तरह से डिजाइन किया जाता है जिससे कि हमें वो आंसर जो है अच्छे से प्राप्त हो जाए, और कुछ उन प्रश्नों का जो आंसर है या उत्तर है वो समाज के लिए या किसी विशेष बीमारी के लिए और किसी विशेष बीमारी के रोगियों के लिए बड़ा ही इम्पोर्टेंट है। दूसरे शब्दों में अगर अपन कहना चाहें तो रिसर्च वर्क का जो उत्तर है, जो आंसर है, जो एंड प्रोडक्ट है, वो व्यक्तिगत स्वास्थ्य हो या सामाजिक स्वास्थ्य हो, उसकी वैज्ञानिक समझ में योगदान देने वाला हो और किसी बीमारी के पीड़ित लोगों को स्टेबल रखने की वो बीमारी वैसी रहे जैसे यापे बीमारी जिसको अपन बोलते हैं आयुर्वेद में, और या फिर उसका इलाज करने वाला हो या फिर उसकी देखभाल से संबंधित हो। उसके वर्तमान जो तरीके हैं उस बीमारी को ट्रीट करने के, उनको थोड़ा या तो इम्प्रूव करने वाला हो या उनको बदलने वाला हो। ऐसा कुछ हमारा जो है एक रिसर्च का उद्देश्य होता है। अगर हम बात करें एक रिसर्च स्टडी की तो उसको इस तरह से मेनली डिजाइन करना चाहिए जिसमें कि उसके जो इम्पोर्टेंट इश्यूज हैं उनका हमको समझने योग्य एक आंसर मिल सके। इसमें ये जो जो प्रश्न हैं जो पूछे जाते हैं, जो प्रश्न, वो एक्चुअल में जो रिसर्च स्टडी है उसकी लीगल और प्रैक्टिकल वैल्यूज के आधार पे, जिनको कि हम इथिक्स बोलते हैं, रिसर्च इथिक्स बोलते हैं, उनके आधार पर उनको एस्टेब्लिश रखे हुए और एक अध्ययन किया जाए, एक स्टडी की जाए, उसमें एक स्पष्ट वैज्ञानिक उद्देश्य के साथ और स्वीकृत सिद्धांतों के साथ। खास तौर पे हमारी आयुर्वेद की बात करें तो जो हमारी जो एंशियंट जो वैल्यूज हैं उनको शामिल करते हुए, उनको उपयोग में लेते हुए हम उस स्टडी को अमल में लाए हैं। ये तो एक स्टडी का उद्देश्य हो गया। दूसरा, अगर बीइंग असिस्टेंट, अगर हम ये कोविड एरा जब आया उसमें हम बात करें और पहले भी अगर हम ध्यान देते तो हमको पता पड़ता कि एक्चुअल में ऑथेंटिसिटी और रिलायबिलिटी के बात जब आती है तो बहुत सारी मेडिसिन साइड में हो जाती हैं, कुछ थोड़ी सी फार्मेसीज बचती हैं गिनी चुनी, और उनमें बहुत थोड़े से प्रोडक्ट्स हमको ये दिखाई पड़ते हैं कि जो कि बहुत सही हैं या जिनको कि हम रिलायबल और ऑथेंटिक मान सकते हैं। ठीक है, हमारे आचार्यों ने, अगर आयुर्वेद के हिसाब से हम बात करें तो हजारों साल पहले जो रिसर्च की वैल्यूज, जो रिसर्च के पॉइंट्स जो स्थापित किए थे, जो कि आज भी हमको प्रासंगिक मालूम होते हैं, और कुछ जो स्टडीज उन्होंने जो की वो सारी की सारी आज भी हमें बहुत अच्छे से एस्टेब्लिश्ड, वेल एस्टेब्लिश्ड मालूम होती है। उनको हम अभी तक उनकी वैल्यूज नहीं चेंज कर सके, उनको हम बदल नहीं सके, और उनको बदलना बहुत मुश्किल है हमारे लिए। हम और दूसरा ये भी है कि कुछ टाइम से, कुछ एक लंबी हमारी जो गुलामी रही, या कह लें कि हम जो है के अधीन रहे, उसमें जो हमारी शिक्षा बहुत सारी चीजें एस्टेब्लिश करना चाहें के लिए हम हमारे पास कोई डाटा नहीं है। तो हमारे लिए अभी ये जरूरत है कि हमारी ये जिम्मेदारी बनती है फार्मेसीज की, हमारी सबकी, कि हम जो है उस व्यवस्था को वापस से रीस्टैब्लिश करें, जिसमें कि जो जो उस समय जो तात्कालिक नुकसान हुआ आयुर्वेद का, और उसको हम वापस से रिफिल कर पाए। और उसकी जो जिम्मेदारी है फार्मेसीज के लिए, मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा कि आचार्यों द्वारा की गई जो रिसर्चेस थी, वो जिनको कि उनमें से बहुत सारी जो है शास्त्रीय मेडिसिन या क्लासिकल मेडिसिन हम आज भी उपयोग में लेते हैं और देखते हैं कि उसको रिजल्ट्स भी आ रहे हैं, है ना। और उन्होंने उस समय जो रिसर्च के बेस तैयार किए थे, जैसे कि हम कहना चाहें दशविध परीक्षा है, दशविध परीक्षा भाव है, द्वादश परीक्षा है, विमान स्थान में बताई गई जो है चाणक्य में, और हम अष्टविध परीक्षा की बात करें, हम तंत्रियुक्तियों की बात करें, हम उसके ये जो चतुष्पाद हैं उनकी बात करें, ये सब चीजें, और प्रकृति विकृति की बात करें, इन सब की बात करें, तो हमें पता पड़ता है कि बहुत सारे पैरामीटर्स हमारे आचार्यों ने बहुत अच्छे से तय किए गए थे, जिसमें कि इंडिविजुअली जो मेडिसिन की भी बात कही गई थी, और बहुत डीप थीसिस या बहुत डीप रिसर्च तैयार की गई थी। इन पैरामीटर्स के आधार पर भी वो आचार्य ऐसा कर पाए, जिसमें कि आज भी जिनको हम झुटलाना या उनको झूठा कहना या उनको थोड़ा सा भी अपन डिनाई करना अगर चाहें तो भी नहीं कर सकते, वो बहुत मुश्किल है। लेकिन अब देखते हैं, अब आजकल का जो पैरामीटर है वो बड़ा चेंज हो गया है। आजकल पैथोलॉजिकल लेबोरेटरीज हैं और इन्वेस्टिगेशंस के जो बहुत सारे तरीके हैं और क्लिनिकल पैरामीटर्स हैं, वो सब चेंज हो गए हैं, और ये सब जो है बहुत ज्यादा विकसित हुए हैं। ये नो डाउट आधुनिक चिकित्सा विज्ञान में बहुत ज्यादा अपना उन्नति की है, और सभी लोग, अब पूरा विश्व ये चाहता है कि इन पैरामीटर्स को मानते हुए ही आयुर्वेद आगे बढ़े। और समय की डिमांड है कि हम उन पैरामीटर्स पे जो कि मॉडर्न मेडिसिन ने स्थापित कर रखे हैं, उन पे हम आयुर्वेद को कसौटी मान करके उन पे खरा उतारे उस आयुर्वेद को, उसी में आयुर्वेदिक ट्रीटमेंट भी हो और मेडिसिन भी हो, और उसी के अकॉर्डिंग हमारी रिसर्चेस भी हो। तो ये बेसिक जो है इस समय डिमांड बड़ी इस चीज की हो रही है। लेकिन मेरा जो पर्सनली अगर मैं एक व्यू बताऊं, तो ये जो आधुनिक पैरामीटर्स हैं या लेबोरेटरिकल पैरामीटर्स हैं, ये एक तरह से पतंग के धागे के समान है, जो कि आयुर्वेद के हाथी को बांधने के लिए इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं हम, क्योंकि इनके बेस पे हम पूरी तरह से आयुर्वेद को डिफाइन कर पाए, ये बहुत मुश्किल काम है। और इन्हीं लैकुनास की वजह से आज फार्मेसीज जो है वो बहुत फायदा उठा रही हैं, और वो बहुत, मतलब इस समय मार्केट बहुत बेकार हो रखा है। लेकिन आयुर्वेद जो है बेसिकली बहुत विस्तृत बात करता है, वो व्यक्तिगत चिकित्सा की बात करता है, और वो व्यक्ति की प्रकृति के आधार पर एक ही बीमारी में अलग अलग पेशेंट्स को अलग अलग मेडिसिन देने की बात करते हैं, क्योंकि हर व्यक्ति की प्रकृति अलग अलग है, और अलग अलग प्रकृति के हिसाब से हम एक ही बीमारी में अलग अलग पेशेंट को अलग अलग तरह से हमको ट्रीट करना होता है। इसीलिए आचार्यों ने एक ही बीमारी के लिए बहुत सारी मेडिसिन, बहुत सारे कल्पनाएं, बहुत सारी तरीके, वे ऑफ ट्रीटमेंट बताए। वो इसीलिए बताए जिससे कि हम एक ही बीमारी के अलग अलग बीमारों को अलग अलग तरह से ट्रीट कर सकें। तो ये बहुत डीप स्टडी है। आजकल भी जैसे जीन थेरेपी और ये सब चीजें आ रही है, वो मेरे ख्याल से उससे काफी मिलती जुलती है। लेकिन उस बेस पर, उस कसौटी पर जाना और वो बहुत सारी चीजें करना हमारे लिए अभी हम देखें तो जैसे प्रमाण शारीर है, प्रमाण शारीर जो चिकित्सा उसका सुश्रुत का है, उसमें हम अगर बात करें तो रस है, ओज है, वात पित्त कफ हैं, इन सब के पैरामीटर्स हमारे पास अगर लेबोरेटरी में हम जाकर के देखें तो कहीं माप नहीं सकते। ये एक बड़ी समस्या है हमारे लिए। हमारे पास हमारे पैरामीटर्स को हमको विकसित करना चाहिए और लेबोरेटरिकल पैरामीटर्स की सहायता लेकर के हमको आगे चलना चाहिए। इसके लिए ये एक संभावना जो है हो सकती है। अब जैसे बात करें हम अभी बेसिकली डीटीएल्स जो ड्रग टेस्टिंग लेबोरेटरीज जो होती हैं आयुर्वेद की, उनमें अगर हम किसी दवा के सैंपल को टेस्ट भी कराते हैं तो हम ये नहीं कह सकते कि उनमें कौन कौन से इंग्रेडिएंट्स हैं, कौन कौन सी इंग्रेडिएंट्स कितनी परसेंटेज में हैं। तो एक्चुअल में हम उसके लिए कुछ भी नहीं बता सकते। हमारे डिटेल्स उनमें बहुत कम है सक्षम बताने में। हमारे पुराने आचार्य अगर हम देखें तो वो सूंघ करके और उसमें टेस्ट करके बता देते थे भाई ये शुद्ध फलादी चूर्ण है, ये प्रतिकर चूर्ण है, इस तरह से। लेकिन हमारे पास लेबोरेटरिकल इतना अच्छा एस्टेब्लिशमेंट नहीं है और इस चीज की कमी को भी दूर किया जाना बहुत जरूरी है। प्राइवेट डिटेल्स जो हैं वो कोशिश कर रही हैं, लेकिन उनको और मेहनत की आवश्यकता है। गवर्नमेंट को भी इसमें इनिशिएटिव लेना चाहिए। काफ़ी अभी ले भी रही है, लेकिन इतना सब कुछ होने पर भी अगर पैथो लैब और डीटीएल लैब्स की हम थोड़ी सी सहायता लेकर के और ये काम करते हैं कि थोड़ा थोड़ा आगे बढ़ें और इनको आगे बढ़ाते हुए हम हमारे पैरामीटर्स को, जो पुराने एंशिएंट पैरामीटर्स हैं, उनको भी स्टैब्लिश करें और जितना कर पाएं उतना बढ़िया। लेकिन मान लो अगर हम नहीं भी कर पाते हैं तो इतना कर सकते हैं जैसा कि डॉक्टर साहब ने अभी कहा कि एथिक्स में हिस्ट्री भी इम्पोर्टेंट है, एथिक्स में मॉरल वैल्यूज भी इम्पोर्टेंट है, एथिक्स में लॉ भी इम्पोर्टेंट है। तो हिस्ट्री को तो हमको साथ लेके चलना ही है, क्योंकि आयुर्वेद हमारा जो है हिस्ट्री में बहुत रिच है। आयुर्वेद की हिस्ट्री बहुत रिच है। उसमें जो एथिक्स दिए गए हैं, उसमें जो हमारे जो पैरामीटर्स दिए गए हैं वो बहुत ज़्यादा अच्छे हैं। उन पैरामीटर्स को हम आज हमारी लेबोरेटरिकल पैरामीटर्स से को रिलेट करते हुए और आगे बढ़े और वैरायटी ऑफ डाटा जो कि हिस्टोरिकल उस पैरामीटर्स पे भी हों और आधुनिक पैरामीटर्स पे भी हों, अगर वैरायटी ऑफ डाटा का कलेक्शन हम करें तो जैसे हमारी पुरानी पुस्तकें जो आज 4000 साल 5000 साल से भी जो दवाइयाँ एस्टेब्लिश हैं, वेल एस्टेब्लिश हैं और बहुत अच्छा ट्रीटमेंट दे रही की तरह
Sir, we lost your voice.
हमारी फार्मेसीज ऐसी अगर वैरायटी ऑफ डाटा में कि आधुनिक पैरामीटर्स भी बहुत अच्छे। Am I audible? Hello.
Yeah, now audible. Now audible.
Hello. Okay. हाँ, तो मैं ये कह रहा था कि
We lost again. Sir, you can turn off the video.
Yeah, please
and
turn off the
just-
video.
Just stay on the audio.
वैरायटी ऑफ डाटा
It will save your data.
जो है
Sir, I guess we lost you. Pawan sir.
वो लेते हुए अगर हमारी रिसर्च हेलो
Pawan sir, the host of the webinar, I just request you to, or Parikshit sir,
Yes.
if you are there.
Yes, I'm there.
Okay, okay. We are not getting very clear audio and video from Dr. Yogeshwar.
Okay.
Okay, so with your permission, if you can allow us to, you know, carry forward the webinar to another speaker. And once the
No. We should wait. We should wait.
yeah, we are waiting, but that's why once the Yogeshwarji is having very clear network again. Okay, so
Yogeshwarji is muted at present.
okay,
Please,
okay,
please
that's fine.
request him to unmute.
Requesting Yogeshwar sir to unmute himself first.
हेलो
Yes sir, audible.
सर यहाँ पर क्या है कि वाईफाई की बहुत स्थिति खराब है, इस समय मौसम बहुत खराब चल रहा है।
आपने पहले ही हमें आगाह कर दिया था कि जयपुर में बहुत हैवी रेन
जी,
हो
जी।
रही है और जिसकी वजह से आपका
जी,
वाईफाई
जी।
आपको दिक्कत दे रहा है। वी कंप्लीटली अंडरस्टैंड सर। Please sir,
हाँ,
you were talking about the current ethics to the
या मैं ये कह रहा था
Please, sir.
कि
Yes,
जो हमारी इस समय जो रिसर्च है वो मॉडर्न पैरामीटर्स को साथ में लेकर के और हमारे जो एंशिएंट पैरामीटर्स हैं उनको भी कंबाइन करके वैरायटी ऑफ डाटा कलेक्शन किया जाए तो मेरे ख्याल से बहुत ज़्यादा अच्छा होगा। और दूसरी बात ये है कि जैसे हमारे एंशिएंट जो क्लासिकल मेडिसिन हैं जो इतने हजार सालों से चली आ रही हैं, वैसे ही अगर पेटेंट मेडिसिन जो अगर नई इंट्रोड्यूस करती हैं फार्मेसीज वगैरह, कोई कंपनी इंट्रोड्यूस करती है तो वो लॉन्ग स्टेबल हो, लॉन्ग टाइम तक स्टेबल हो, वो ऐसा डाटा कलेक्शन किया जाए। ऐसा नहीं हो कि वो 3-4 महीने से मार्केट में गायब हो जाएं और फिर वो बस वो प्रॉफिट लेकर के दूसरी लॉन्च कर दें। और ये ट्रेंड चला आ रहा है तो वो चीज़ खत्म होनी चाहिए। ये इथिक्स जो है इनको थोड़ा सा फॉलो करना चाहिए कि हमको ईमानदारी से डाटा कलेक्शन करना चाहिए और हमको ईमानदारी से स्टडी करनी चाहिए, ईमानदारी से पूरा वर्क करना चाहिए जिससे कि लॉन्ग स्टेबिलिटी हो मेडिसिन की मार्केट में और वैल्यूएबिलिटी भी हो। हमने आज देखा भाई कोरोना के टाइम पर हम किसी भी मेडिसिन को इस वजह से यूज़ नहीं कर पाए, इस वजह से गवर्नमेंट ने हमें इजाज़त नहीं दी क्योंकि हमारे पास डाटा कलेक्शन नहीं था। ये एक बहुत बड़ी विडंबना का विषय है। ये बहुत सोचनीय बात है कि हमारे लिए और फार्मेसीज़ के लिए, पूरे मार्केट के लिए, आयुर्वेदिक पूरे उस विधा के लिए कि भई हमने क्या किया? हमने हमारे हाथ से एक बहुत बड़ा जो अवसर था, जो इस विपदा में हम पूरे इंडिया को, पूरे विश्व को उबार सकते थे, वो केवल इस वजह से हमने खो दिया क्योंकि हमारे पास डाटा नहीं था। तो डाटा कलेक्शन बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट है और ख़ास बात ये है इसमें कि एथिक्स को फ़ॉलो किया जाए। ईमानदारी, मॉरल जो है लियाकत सर ने अभी बात की मॉरल की, तो मॉरल ड्यूटी बनती है ये हमारी फार्मेसीज़ की, हमारी खुद की कि इस तरह से हम ईमानदारी पूर्वक जो है डाटा कलेक्शन करें, जिससे कि वो वैल्यूएबल हो। अभी बात की जाए तो डब्ल्यूएचओ ने 2025 के बाद में पोस्ट एंटीबायोटिक एरा उसको कहा है। आफ्टर 2025 पोस्ट एंटीबायोटिक एरा घोषित किया है डब्ल्यूएचओ ने क्योंकि इस समय 70% एंटीबायोटिक्स जो है काम करना बंद कर चुकी हैं। वो रेस्पॉन्ड नहीं कर रही हैं। केवल 30% एंटीबायोटिक्स ऐसी हैं मार्केट में जो कि रेस्पॉन्ड कर रही हैं और नई एंटीबायोटिक लॉन्च होने में अभी कोई उम्मीद नहीं है। तो ये एक ऐसा मौका है कि बहुत पूरा एरा बदलने वाला है। इस समय अगर हम अच्छे से रिसर्च करके अच्छे रिजल्ट्स दे पाएँगे, तो मेरे ख़्याल से हमारे बराबर का या हमारी टक्कर का कोई भी नहीं होगा। ये बिल्कुल राइट टाइम है, हमें खुद को और आयुर्वेद को प्रतिष्ठापित करने के लिए। हमको ये दिखा देना चाहिए कि हम अनादि हैं, आयुर्वेद अनंत है और बस एक ईमानदारी से एक काम लेकर के चलने की देर है और कुछ भी नहीं है। बाकी तो गोल्डन ईरा जो है सामने खड़ा है अपने, ठीक है? इससे ज़्यादा अब मैं मेरे ख्याल से इसी बात पे अब मैं विराम करता हूँ क्योंकि ज़्यादा लंबा मैं इसको कंटिन्यू नहीं रख पा रहा हूँ। थोड़ा-सा प्रॉब्लम है नेटवर्क का भी, आप लोगों को भी सुनने में प्रॉब्लम है थोड़ी-सी। थैंक यू वेरी मच। आप लोगों का बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद सबका।
Dr. Yogeshwarji, we really appreciate that you have taken out your
Thank you, sir. Thank you, all of you.
Yeah, sir. We really appreciate that you have taken out your time in a very short notice. Because we have just sent you a few days back and you have joined us. We are really very thank you to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Now, let me ask Dr. Deepak Semwal, who is Assistant Professor, Department of Phytochemistry, Faculty of Biomedical Science, Uttarakhand Ayurveda University, Dehradun. Sir has joined us, and we request Sir to please enlighten us on today's subject. Please, Dr. Semwal, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm really thankful to organizers for this nice invitation. And really, as Dr. Ali said, that this is really need of the hour to know about what are the ethics and why we require ethics, and why we need to know about the ethics in the research, particularly in the clinical research, if we are doing the clinical research. Before talking about the clinical research, I'm just showing you one or two slides.
Do you want to share the screen?
Yeah. Yeah. Is it fine?
It's visible, sir.
Is this visual?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, where we need ethics, importantly, if we are working on the Ayurvedic drugs, we are writing some case studies, our research is survey based, we are performing or conducting some yoga practices, or some kind of experiment based on the yoga and other exercises. And similarly, suppose we are doing some kind of research with Panchkarm, Agnikarm, leech therapy, Marl therapy, etc., etc. All these areas where we need to be very clear about the ethical issues, where the ethical issues arises, and what we need to do for that. Now, before moving ahead on the clinical research, these are basic things where we are very much lucky that we usually, we are not coming from these steps. But the good thing is we usually do reverse pharmacology. We have already some classical concepts or the classical drugs in which we are working, and if we want to conduct some trial with the classical drugs, it is very much easy for us, because we don't need to produce any preclinical data for such studies. So before coming to that point, I'm just mentioning here two or three things. First of all, in each step, we have ethical issues in each steps, except this molecular docking, where only a software is working. And because there is no living body is involved in this case, so there is no ethical issues. We can just use some molecule or some moieties to bind with some kind of proteins or some other enzymes, whether they are working with that or not. And based on this molecular docking, we move forward usually to save our time, one thing, and to save our money as well. In case of in vitro, we usually know that in vitro cases, there are no big issues involved. And if we do in vitro work, we can also publish the work without any major ethical issues. But important thing is what kind of work we have. In case of in vitro is also based on the simply antimicrobial using E. coli, simply antimicrobial using S. aureus. So these are some friendly bacteria where we can easily work, and if we don't have even second uh, uh, in laboratory with second stage or like that, so at least we can do some kind of work with that, and there are no issues with that. But if we are working with some advanced or some bit dangerous microbes, just like if we talk about the tuber mycobacterium tuberculi, and similarly to other, we need some other kind of laboratory system, so that no one can be infected after if someone come with in that laboratory, and we have to be very much careful about the system what we have. So these are some in vitro studies. Similarly, in next stage, if we will talk about this COVID-19, as you all know that government of India, not only government of India, even WHO has only given permission to very, very selected laboratories where there is already a very much advanced system, because this is the spreading possibilities were really, really high, and we have to be very, and the lack of, obviously the lack of knowledge, because there is not sufficient data that how and where we can perform the experiment. So there are a lot of other things where we need level 4 laboratory to work on the coronavirus, novel coronavirus rather. So these are also a kind of ethics. We must say that ethics, these are the ethics, and then we must get permission before working with that. Another experiment is ex vivo. We are not directly working on the living systems, but we are taking sample, or we are taking a tissue or an organ from the animal or the human, and taking it to the laboratory and working with that. It also needs some kind of permissions, because we whether we are taking organ from a dead person, or we are taking organ or some tissues from after surgery of a particular patient, or even if we are isolating sperms from almost dead man, or who is in his last stage. So in all these cases, we need permission before taking these samples. Even blood samples, what we usually we go to the some kind of testing laboratories where we can give blood for the for our suppose CBC we want to do, or LFT we want to do, or what other kind of blood parameters we want to check whether we are okay or not. Why we get that sample? We only get that sample to know about our health status. But if somebody want to take that blood sample from that laboratory and want to use for the research purpose, or want to use that sample for another purpose, that's also a kind of ethics. And before without any permission, no one can get these kind of samples, even although you gave that one, but no one can take it away uh, for another kind of one. Similarly, if we talk about the some slaughterhouse, we are working with some tissues or some cell culture, and we want some organ or some tissues from hen or goat, and we can go some slaughterhouse and can bring organ or tissues from there, and work with that particular organ in the laboratory. But it's also under the ethical issues. We cannot do that without permission of any ethical ethical committee or framed by the university or institutions for that particular purpose. So these all are the ethical issues involved in the ex vivo experiments. Now, in vivo means these are preclinical but directly involved with animals. We are working with mice, we are working with rats, we are working with rabbits, we are working with guinea pig. All these animals also require some ethical permissions before working with them. Before because a man, human right, because a man can say that what is happening, what is wrong with that, but an animal can't. So government of India framed, although in other countries it's already the system, but in India at least, uh, uh, in 1964, they framed some guidelines to protect the rights of animals also. And there are a lot of some guidelines they have framed that what and which kind of animals can be taken, what kind of research can be taken with that. So these all kind of things, and if we use the animals, we require ethical clearance for doing such kind of studies. And finally, the clinical studies. Obviously, if human rights are involved, even if we are talking about the publishing of any case report, I will discuss it later on also. Suppose we are going to publish a case report, and we have photographs or a picture of a patient, and we want to be published or we want to be put it in public domain without consent of that patient. We cannot do that. There's also a kind of ethics. These are some direct applications of the ethical guidelines, some direct examples of the ethics where the ethics are involved. Now, what I was talking about, Government of India framed some guidelines, and these guidelines were under Committee for the Purpose of Control and Supervision of Experiments on Animals, SIPSIA guidelines. And according to that guidelines, each and every institutions conducting the work on animals, they must have an institutional ethical committee, and the constitution of that institutional ethical committee must be uh, in which one biological scientist means mainly belong to medical field, belong to zoology, belong to biotechnology, belong to microbiology, like that. Two scientists from different biological discipline, different, suppose one belonging to pharmacology, another must be belong to the zoology or like that. Third, a veterinarian involved in the care of animal. Veterinarian means why this required? This is required because there may be some, during the treatment, some animal may be, harmed or injured or like that. So one veterinarian must be involved in the care of animal. Scientist in charge. Now, scientist in charge, the scientist in charge may be from outside of the biology background. Now, scientists from outside of the institute. This is important. Why this is required? Because the whatever the decision of the ethical committee, that must be unbiased and non-scientific, socially aware member. Why that's required? It may involve one female, or it may require one social activist who can at least understand that what is happening, and if one can stop the things, can have right to stop the things. There is not very much required in that particular area. Now, another thing, the nominee of SIPSIA, obviously, one nominee must be from that SIPSIA, which is responsible for framing the guidelines. So these are for the animal trials. Now I'm coming to the point, clinical trials. Now, if we just check the Google, we can find a lot of ethical guidelines that how we can conduct the trials with the drugs, or how we can do some clinical studies with involving humans. But particularly if we talk about the Ayurvedic drugs, CCRS has framed some guidelines called good clinical practice, and how and why we require that thing. It's a very descriptive document, and everybody who want to be involved in any research must write that document very carefully and understand at least just why and where the requirement of ethical issues, and from where we can clear those ethical issues, and what we should do and what we shouldn't do. So these all things are framed by the CCRS, and according to that, I'm just showing you a few kind of studies in the animal trial. One is observational studies. Observational studies means you are not giving trial to anybody. These are only observation. It is either already a approved protocol, and some patients are already taking some approved protocol, and you are just observing that whether that protocol working, and if working, how much population is benefiting from that, and how much are not. So these are observational kind of studies, and these are the observational kind of studies. If you are it is semi-experiment, you can say, and in under same thing, if you are writing a systematic review, or if you are writing a meta-analysis, it all based on the already published data, which is already in public domain. In such cases, you do not need any ethical clearance, because these are already in public domain, and you are just extracting that data from the public domain, and you are giving your own opinion that what may be happening, so that in future the people can be benefited from that. That initially, for example, I'm explaining one thing. For example, there was a particular infection in past 10 year or 15 year, whatever, and this was in a particular area. Suppose this was in a region, in Asian region. Now there are a lot of protocols, because obviously if pandemic is there, a lot of trials may be taken to treat the patient. Now all the things are already published. Now you take that data, and you give your own analysis based on that data, that this protocol was best, and if in future same thing happened, at least we have one choice to give the same protocol to the patient, so that we can save the population. So these all are the observational studies, and these all observational studies, we do not need any ethical clearance. But important thing is experimental studies. Experimental studies where we take trials. We have a drug. If it is classical drug, there are so many relaxations already, because there is no toxicity concern. That this is already in practice, so you don't need any preclinical data for that. You can directly go for the clinical trial. Even phase 2 clinical trial can be taken, and multicentric, and even if there are some small data you have already, you can even go for the phase 3 trial. So this is really, really nice with the trial of Ayurvedic drugs, because they are already in practice. Now, if that is a new drug means, although that's a herbal, and there is no that combination or that drug is not mentioned in any classic. So you need to be very careful for that, and before going for the clinical trial, you need to show preclinical data for that. What must be the dose? What is LD50 of that particular drug? uh, uh, what is pharmacokinetic of that particular, what is the drug loss, what is everything. So you need to be very careful about that. And once you have all the preclinical data which is favorable, not the toxic one, which is encouraging and at least showing that you can move forward for the clinical trial, only you can take the clinical trial, and your institutional ethical committee will give you clearance to conduct that clinical trial. Otherwise, you cannot do that. So, yeah, this is constitution of Human Ethical Committee. As I showed you earlier, that that was the committee for animal trials. Now this is committee for clinical trials involving direct humans. In this case, the important thing is chairperson, a technical chairperson with research background, member secretary, clinician, 1 to 2 Ayurvedic practitioner, clinician from different institutes, basic medical scientist, 1 to 2 basic medical scientists, then maybe from pharmacologist, or 1 to 2 from Dravya Guna Ras Shastra or Vaishya Kalpana. Legal expert, that's very much important. Legal expert, it is always encouraging if any retired judge is involved in the committee. One social scientist, philosopher, ethicist, theologian, representative of NGO, and like that. And one lay person from the community, that may be from a representative of a village or nearby that area, who can at least see that whether this treatment or this trial is legal or not, or can be done, or maybe someone is maybe this is harmful for someone or not. So these all things are required before planning a clinical trial. So one more important thing is patient consent. Now, once you are ready for the trial, now if you want to enroll any patient, whether that is for the drug, for the for the yoga practice, for the with drug or drugless therapy, whatever is, whether it is a drug, whether it is a drug or drugless, in all cases, you need consent from a patient, or we must say the human or the volunteer who is enrolled, who is being enrolled in the trial. Why it is required? As I earlier discussed, if that is your moral duty to save the personal data of any patient with you. This is the moral duty. We cannot publicize any data until the patient give us permission to do so. Suppose usually we read lot of case studies, and clinician very easily capture the picture before after, and publicize the things without taking consent from the patient. This is unethical, and we have to be very careful, because these are not the right practice. These are not the right practice until we have clear consent from the patient. Where we can 1 or 2 cases where there may be some relaxation. Suppose the patient is in such condition where cannot give you return permission or cannot sign or cannot give. In such cases, verbal permission is important, one thing. In some cases where suppose this COVID pandemic was there, and in such cases where patients are in ventilator, and it is very much difficult, neither oral consent nor written consent. In such cases, because some relaxations are there if you want to conduct some kind of clinical trials. So these all about the clinical trials, and what I discuss about all these things, we have to be very careful, and we have to know about the ethics before starting any trial, whether it is clinical or preclinical trial. Thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent, Dr. Chambal. Great. Very nice. You have presented very scientific presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now I would like to request Dr. Geet from CDSA that has a very unique project, EEC. So I would like to request Dr. Geet to unmute himself.
Yes, sir. I am there. Thank you, sir. Sir, sorry, actually the internet connection is not so well, so I have not switched on my video. I am direct going to start presenting my screen. So, is there access for that? Sir, is my screen is visible?
Yeah, yes.
So hi, good evening all. I am Dr. Geet Agrawal. I am a Ayurveda graduate. I have done my BMS from Kanpur University, and I have done post graduation in clinical research from Crema, New Delhi, and I'm working since 2009 into this clinical research field. I have done several vaccine trials, then cosmetic trials, Ayurveda clinical trials, and now I'm to this project that is electronic ethics committees. So as you know that ethics committee job is a thankless job, so much priority. And when we visited several medical institutions, so they also not have that much priority. So we think about that, and we have created this software for ethics committee to ease the functioning of the ethics committees. So the introduction is that it is started with the help of FERCI, that are for a Forum for Ethical Reviews Committees in India and PATH. They have co-developed this software suite in 2017. Now the software has been handed over to CDSA, and now CDSA is taking care of this software. So it is a software suite. There are 5 software, but the main software it is the Electronic Ethics Committee software, that is an online platform that facilitates the submission of ethics-related applications by researchers and their review by Institutional Ethics Committee. So researchers can submit their proposals online, and also review has been made online, and the decision also can be communicated through the software. So there are 2 versions of the software. So one is supporting the ICMR common forms, and one is supporting the institutional's own forms. So this is the software's homepage. You will just click on that link and you can access the software. It is a cloud-based software, so that's why it can be accessed anywhere, anytime. And it is HTTPS supported, so the data has been that stored in the software is encrypted. So the process flow of the ethics committee software, that the investigators will going to register themselves into the institute, on the research institute, and after registration and login, they can start doing submission as per the project type and the review type. First, it will go to admin. Admin will review the details. If the project is complete or not, then he or she will forward to member secretary for review. Then secretary will assign the reviewers from his login or her login. So all the members' name are visible into the member secretary's login. He can select the reviewers and forward the project to them to review. After that discussion during the physical meeting or one-to-one or online, they will decide after the decision, they will just post that particular decision online and communicate it to the principal investigator. And then upon the type of decision, principal investigator will respond. And if it is approved, they can start doing resubmissions or sorry, subsequent submissions also. So this is how the software will look like. So suppose any institute of the software, this will be the home screen. So I have blacked out some of the portion and it is privacy related issues. But you can see that register icon that is in the blue. So PI first need to click them and do their registration. Once they registered and created their login, they just need to click on this submit new project icon. And once they click, the certain details will appear. They will just need to fill project summary. After the filling of the project summary, they will just need to select their document type and upload it into the software. Once they upload it, they can directly click on submit for IEC review. So it means the investigator, when they will have their documents ready with them, it will hardly take like 5 to 10 minutes to submit their proposal. They will not personally reach to ethics committee for to handing over their documents. Whenever they are free, even on Sundays or even midnight, whenever they are free, they can just submit their proposals to the ethics committee. Once they forward the project, it will reach to IEC admin. Admin is a person who is a non-technical. He just look after the administrative details of the project. This is the dashboard of the project. Admin. He can select the particular project with the different category and access that particular project. He or she will review the project, and after reviewing, he or she just forward the project to member secretary for further process. Once they forward the to the member secretary will have the notification on the registered email ID indicating that you have a project for review. So they can just click on the link and log in and can start doing, process further. Once they click on projects, they will access to several type of projects. From the action icon, they will move forward and can start doing review of that particular project. So once they click on, these are the project summary first. Then once they have the access to project summary, they will have the access to the documents or different documents that have been submitted online by PI. And after reviewing them, they can also select the reviewers to review the project. After review, members can also post their comments online. So this is the members login. These are the projects that can be viewed by members. So they can just click on action and reviewing the project or submitted documents by online. And they can also submit their comments online, or they can also upload their institution specific documents that has been provided to them for a review of the documents. Once they upload it, they will submit to member secretary. Member secretary can view those documents, and after the physical meeting, they can submit the decision. So this is the decision part or decision window of the member secretary. They can just select the decision, upload the document type, and click on submit. Once they submit it, the principal investigator receive a notification indicating that your project has a decision. You can click on the link, login, and can download your letter from your login. Upon basis of the decision, they can do the subsequent submissions. So there are the options in the PI login that they can do subsequent submissions also. Other than these, member secretary will also have the functions to generate the meeting. They can generate the agenda. They can schedule the meeting. They can generate the agenda. Also, they can generate the minutes of the meetings using this software. So nothing, so all the documents that has been generated like agenda or minutes of meeting, all are in the Word format. So if institution want, they can also edit that particular document and can upload and can forward it to different members. So that they have access to minutes of meeting also in the agenda. This is the chairperson's login. So as per guideline, chairpersons have not much to do with the decision process. So the role of the chairperson is only when the when the submitted project is under expedited review or in exempt from review. So they will the main action is of the chairperson in that particular type of projects for the review. But ultimately, decision making power or decision submitting power or decision forwarding power is of member secretary. So that function is only available in member secretary's login in the software. So what are the advantages of the using this software? That streamlined submission and the review process, increased data privacy, security, and confidentiality, save storage space. So, since you are not, having any hard copies of the document, you will not going to provide individual copies to every member. And after the meeting, you will collect. And so you have the space issue. But if you are using this software, you just need to have collect one copy from the principal investigator to your, archival process, as it is mentioned in the guideline that it is necessary to have, store only at least one copy of the documents. And the significant time saving, as I mentioned, that it can be submitted anywhere, anytime. So it will save a lot of time of principal investigators. Full tracking, supervision, and archiving of the submissions. So once the project has been having the final completion report, it will automatically move into archival section that is present in the software. So that can also be accessed anytime. It will save printing cost. Then the providing access controlled workflow. So it is like email ID, password, and the login. Login control workflow it is having. It provides real-time tracking of projects. Keeps internal and external communication in one place. Trackers user activity to promote transparency. Tracks user activity to promote transparency. Help in optimal decision taking. And as I mentioned, access anytime and anywhere. The software will also support several types of reports that can be very much helpful to the ECs, and that will track all type of submissions when they will submit, who are the investigators. So every report or every summary can be generated through the software. So the team is constantly upgrading EEC. So whenever there is change in the guideline, we just change the software as per the new guidelines. And if any query or any information do you requiring additional details or demonstration you are requiring, you can just email us on these email IDs whenever you want. For a short while, this screen will be there so that you can, just have a screenshots or note it down. That's it from my side. Thanks. If any queries, I will be here to answer them.
We'll have an open question session, but I guess today we are losing time. Okay, but we have noted down, Dr. Geet, really very thank you for your time. In a short notice, you have prepared this slides for us and share it with us. And I wish that if you can drop the same presentation or the PDF or the PPTX form, okay, to Sharma, then it would be very helpful for us to understand it in a deeper knowledge. Okay.
I will forward it to Dr. Pavan.
Yes. Please. Thank you. Now I would like to request Dr. Pawan Sharma. He is a gold medalist in MD. We all know that, and clinical research expert. He is president of International Research. ES, and he's a member secretary of IECCRI West Bengal. Dr. Sharma, please enlighten us.
नमस्कार, सभी को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद और बहुत बहुत स्वागत। एक छोटी सी, ज्यादा समय नहीं लूंगा, लेकिन जब ये कल्पना शुरू हुई और रेगुलेशंस बनना शुरू हुए, तब हम लोगों को एक इंडिपेंडेंट एथिक्स कमेटी की जरूरत पड़ी। हमने इंडिपेंडेंट एथिक्स कमेटी एज पर CDSC और रेगुलेशंस के बनाई तो अब उन्होंने कहा कि साहब ये तो रजिस्टर्ड बॉडी होना चाहिए। तो इसका हमें मालूम पड़ा, ये मैं सबकी जानकारी के लिए और सबकी सुविधा के लिए बता रहा हूं। तो हमें मालूम पड़ा कि ये रजिस्ट्रार ऑफिस जाना पड़ेगा, जो रजिस्ट्रार ऑफ सोसाइटीज एंड ट्रस्ट है। तो हम 1 साल चक्कर लगाए। उन्होंने कहा हम किसी कमेटी को रजिस्टर्ड नहीं करते, वी आर रजिस्टरिंग ओनली सोसाइटी और ट्रस्ट, बट वी आर नॉट रजिस्टरिंग एनी कमिटी in our organization. So we changed our mission, we changed our broader mission and constituted Independent Research Ethics Society for research, for education, for propagation of Ayurveda, for support to the society through medical camps, etc. So we have registered them. Then we went to CDSCO. That sir, now our committee is registered as Independent Research Ethics Society. Please approve. So they denied. CDSCO denied because the sponsor organization and members, the ethics committee should have members, 50% members out of the sponsor organization. They were not ready to listen that this society has been created for ethics committee only. So they instructed well that no, if this is the constitution, we are unable to register you. So please change your constitution and involve 50% additional independent members. So we did it. And we got the registration by God's grace last year. Fortunately, I am member secretary of that. Our constitution is chairperson Dr. S.K. Bandyopadhyay. He is ex-director medical education, Government of West Bengal, MBBS, MD, PhD. Dr. Santanu Munshi, basic medicine scientist, MD and DM, professor and head, Department of Pharmacology, Calcutta National Medical College. Dr. Kalyan B. Bhattacharya ji, neurologist, very renowned neurologist here, and sitting in ex-professor and head Arjikar, and neurologist of Medica. Myself as member secretary, Mr. Nishikant Sinha as social activist, Mr. Amal Chandra Das, LLB, as per the constitution of Mr. Subhajit Chakravarti as a lay person, and Ms. Mamita Sharma as women representative. So we started our journey before 9 years in December 2012. 21st January 2013, training was done, a series of training. And first time we sent to CDSCO 2013, and we got registration in 2020. In the meantime, एक चीज और बताना भूल गया कि ये पहले तो आयुर्वेद के मैंने लोगों को लिया इसमें, क्योंकि मैं आयुर्वेद के लिए बनाना चाहता था। मेरे को 2 साल इसमें लगा समझाने में कि साहब आयुर्वेद के लोग भी क्लिनिशियन होते हैं, आयुर्वेद के लोग भी बेसिक साइंटिस्ट होते हैं, अलग अलग डिपार्टमेंट है हमारे यहाँ। उन्होंने मानने से इनकार कर दिया। उन्होंने मेरा केस आयुष मिनिस्ट्री में भेज दिया, जहां आयुष मिनिस्ट्री में कह दिया कि हमारे यहाँ अभी कोई व्यवस्था नहीं है आपकी इथिक्स कमेटी की रजिस्ट्रेशन। तो अल्टीमेटली जो अल्टीमेट रिजल्ट है वो मैंने आपको बताया कि क्या मेरा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है। ऑब्जेक्टिव जैसा अभी बताया, दैट इज कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इन फंक्शन एंड अकॉर्डेंस विद ICMR गाइडलाइंस। ICCR इंडिया की अपनी SOPs हैं पूरी की पूरी, साइट में जाके आदमी देख सकते हैं। प्रिंसिपल इन्वेस्टिगेटर वहां अप्लाई करते हैं, हम लोग उनको अप्रूवल देते हैं। एंड आई एम वेरी मच इम्प्रेस्ड विद दिस डॉक्टर गीट्स एंड CDSCO THSTI EC सॉफ्टवेयर। मैं सोचता हूं कि ये सॉफ्टवेयर बड़ा अच्छा सपोर्ट करेगा, इसीलिए मैं भी ले रहा हूं अपनी इथिक्स कमेटी में इसको, क्योंकि डॉक्यूमेंटेशन का बड़ा हेडेक है। सर्कुलर इशू करो, नोटिस इशू करो, आदमी आएगा, उनको डॉक्यूमेंट भिजवाओ, 21 दिन का नोटिस दो, डॉक्यूमेंट किसी ने पढ़े नहीं पढ़े, लाइक दैट। So many issues I am facing from last 8 years. We have been, these are our ex-members, late Professor Vijan Kumar Gupta ji, Dr. Pradeep Kumar Devnath ji. He was our initial member of the committee. Now he is no more with us. Late Dr. Jaidev Chattopadhyay, Yogiraj Vijay Chaturvedi ji, and we have approved so many projects. At present, I introduced you in briefly, so there is no need of detailed introduction. Thank you, but it is for your information that in Eastern Zone, CDSCO approved independent ethics committee is there who can support individual researches, who can support non-institutional researches, and who can support expert innovative researches from inventors itself, because it is quite independent, and we will conduct our meeting through this EEC software. So there should not be any doubt of manipulation of any step or any proceeding. Thank you very much. Darshit.
Yes, sir. I was facing some technical issues as well as my end. So now I would like Dr. Parikshit Devnath to say a note of thanks to everyone.
Before vote of thanks, I would like to request Dr. Vishnu Prasad Sharma ji for concluding remarks. Sir.
We'll take
yes.
remarks from.
Good evening. Good evening to everybody. Respected Professor Dr. Liaquat Ali, respected Dr. Pawan Kumar Sharmaji, eminent speaker, moderator Darshit Joshi, Dr. Parikshit Devnath, dear distinguished speaker and learned audience. It was a pleasure listening to such an insightful talk on ethics in clinical research from eminent speaker. Therefore, today's talk on ethics in clinical research was significant in several ways. So first of all,
Sorry for interruption, sir. I have forgotten Madan sir is also with us. So after you, I would request Madan sir also to say a few words. Please proceed, sir. Please proceed.
So first of all, I want to offer my sincere thanks to Professor Dr. Liaquat Ali. In spite of his busy schedule, he has given time along with us. He inaugurated today's webinar and delivered a wonderful talk on importance of biomedical ethics. So I offer my sincere thanks to Professor Liaquat Ali for inaugurating today's webinar and delivered the wonderful lecture. Thank you and namaskar to sir. Next, I want to offer my sincere thanks to Dr. Yogeshwar K. Pandit. He gives stress to use modern criteria for research in Ayurvedic medicine. Thank you, Dr. Yogeshwar K. Pandit, for your wonderful lecture. Next, I would like to offer my sincere thanks to Dr. Deepak Kumar Semwal. He gives lecture on ethics in clinical research. He explained nicely regarding how to follow this experiment to evaluate the drugs effect, nicely described the Constitution for Institutional Ethical Animal Committee for Animal Research, vividly described guideline for clinical evaluation of Ayurvedic intervention. Thank you, Dr. Deepak Kumar Samuel, for your wonderful talk. Next, I would like to offer my sincere thanks to Dr. Geet Agora for nicely described the software using. Thank you very much. Next, I want to offer my sincere thanks to Dr. Pawan Kumar Sharmaji, how he make the independent ethics committee to independent ethics research society, what type of problem he had faced. And I offer my sincere thanks to him also for organize such type of beautiful webinar. Thank you, Pawan Kumar Sharmaji. Next, I want to offer my sincere thanks to moderator, Dorshit Joshi, and host, Dr. Parikshit Devnath. And namaskar to all audience, all the members, and namaskar to Madan Thangavalu, Professor Dr. Madan Thangavalu. Namaskar.
Welcome, Madan Thangavalu ji. Please bless us with your valuable words.
Pawan ji, namaskar.
Namaskar, sir.
Vishnu ji, namaskar. Darshit ji, namaskar. I'm happy to be here with all of you. Thank you for giving me the chance to say a few words. The first thing I want to say, so thanks to all the speakers for giving us such a wonderful overview of what you have in mind and what you want to do. Pawanji, yesterday when we were talking, Pawanji mentioned about the activities that are there going on and the connection that the group in Faridabad now have with the Medical Research Council Clinical Trials Unit. And that is all very nice. Pawanji has nicely highlighted the need for documentation, which has been a problem till now. And the software that you have will help us with that problem and how we can scale it up very easily, because India now has many Ayurveda institutions in all its modalities, not only Ayurveda, but also Siddha medicine, Unani medicine, naturopathy. These are all areas, and yoga too. These are all, there are very old institutions, yoga institutions in Lonavala in Maharashtra is the oldest research institution where the first clinical study was done on yoga. Similarly, All India Institute Medical Science in New Delhi is the first place where they did electroencephalography studies on yogis. And this was done in 1960 and the start of the study related to physiology there. So there are historical domains where we need to, if we are not aware, we need to become aware of these things, number one. So institution in Faridabad and the network you have formed, it's lovely to see your website with Jitender Singh ji, who is there from the Minister of State, from Prime Minister's office, engaging in these dialogues. So it's very nice to see that. The point I would like to add here is that our tradition also has a way in which we have conducted clinical studies. So I want to give one or two examples, and Pawanji might know this, Vishnuji will know about this. When we look in our old Samhitas, we have descriptions of, let us say, Bala, and we have assessment of Sattva, very important aspect of the Ayurvedic systems. And how are we going to capture these important subtleties? Sattva is becoming a very important aspect to understand how the mind-body axis works. So the Ayurveda people, yoga people understand it, but the language that is used is the language of the Samhitas, connected to our tattvas. I feel we shouldn't miss out those areas, and that is very important. There are institutions in India, in Coimbatore, Ayurveda Pharmacy, they have developed a system for capturing very valuable information. There is a system there called Rudra. It is a very important innovation, but somehow it is neglected. And we want to see where we can have dialogues between the new initiatives that are going on for capturing data, clinical trials, and formalizing things. Number two, how to stay connected to our samhitas and tattvas. So Pavanji and Sharmaji, and all the Ayurveda people here, and the Ayush people here, I feel we should not miss that connection, because the speed with which the other side moves is too fast, because they get help from many, many other contributors. There are, it's a very big field. The pharmaceutical industry has invested a lot of money over the decades they had resources to invest, to set up new systems. And we are trying to marry into that 5,000 odd years of history, many thousands of years of clinical practice, and we should see how to make this dialogue happen. Complex procedures like Panchakarma, how are we going to document the results for this? Are we going to use our descriptors? And how are we going to make this comparison between modern physiology parameters and our ancient sciences? So I feel this initiative that is taking place is amazing, much important cross-fertilization that's going on. But we, as from the traditional sciences, Darshit, we should make sure that we don't miss the opportunity to cross-fertilize. We have rich concepts. We have heard many presentations on Manasa Roga. How will we document those? How will we do clinical studies there? So it's a challenge for us, but what you have done here by bringing people together is the first step. And I feel the pressure will be on us to follow things like randomized controlled trials. And our rich concept of Prakriti will get dropped off somewhere. Our rich concept of Tridosh will get dropped off somewhere. Our rich concept of Panjabhut will get dropped off somewhere. So where can we bring this conversation between the very systematic clinical trial systems and our tattvas? So that is the one message I want to give. And we have senior people like Vishnu Sharmaji, we have senior people like Pavanji, who know where the people are, where the research is going. Let us see how to make this dialogue also happen. So I leave that there. We will be watching this space and how it evolves, and see how we can also bring in our Shastras, Tattvas, and the language there. I give you one or two more examples before I go off. Agni Bala. Agni is very important in our system. Agni has a physiological descriptor also. There is a way in which we can describe Agni. May not be as completely as in the Samhitas, but we can get some physiological parameters. Or your Panchavayu concept. How are we going to do this? It's a very important concept. When we come to clinical trials and treatments, clinical Ayurveda, then you understand these concepts. There are rich concepts like Avarana. Pavanji, Sharmaji will tell us about these things. Vishnu Prasadji has already shown us one case study of neural inflammation. How can we capture all this complexity? So I will leave it there, Vishnuji. We must watch this space wherever possible, bring the dialogue together so that our side also can interact with them. They must also learn from us. It cannot be a one-way thing. It must be a bi-directional approach. And hopefully from that Indian interaction, it will come out into the clinical trials unit. There are very, very, very important minds here in London at the MRC Clinical Trials Unit who understand the complexities of setting up a trial, but they may not be aware about the complexities of Ayurvedic thinking or Siddha thinking or yoga thinking. And we must see how to bring this. The connection in Ayurveda and yoga between Panchavayu and Panchaprana. It is understood, you know, it is very, very elegantly understood, and how to bring that together. So I will leave it there. Thank you, Darshit. Thank you, Pavanji. Thank you, Vishnuji, for making this wonderful event happen. I think we have a lot of opportunity to further this dialogue. It might be informal discussions like this where we touch on those points so that people think about it and say, well, we didn't know about Panchavata, Panchavayu. Please tell us about this thing. You know, how do you Apanavayu, to be understood, Apanavayu disturbance is a big problem in aging-related conditions. And Ayurveda has very simple approaches for managing Apanavayu disturbance. You know, Iranda-tail is a very important thing. So our language is internally consistent. There, the other side is also internally consistent. I think when we come together, there'll be a new richness. So, Hari Om, thank you so much. Thank you.
Namaskar.
ये सीरीज ही इसलिए शुरू की सर कि आयुर्वेद की इंडस्ट्री का हम लोग रिसर्च में ध्यान अट्रैक्ट कर सकें, उनके टीम को, उनके स्टाफ को, उनके एग्जीक्यूटिव्स को कम से कम क्लिनिकल रिसर्च के बेसिक्स हम लोग समझा सकें। इसीलिए जीसीपी सीरीज के अंतर्गत हम लोग एक एक टॉपिक लेके आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। कल हमारी आयुष समृद्धि की वेबिनार है, आयुर्वेदा द फर्स्ट एंड बेस्ट हर्बल गैलेक्टोकॉक, क्योंकि कल ब्रेस्ट फीडिंग वीक शुरू हो रहा है, तो उससे अच्छा टॉपिक नहीं हो सकता था। प्लीज प्लीज सपोर्ट अस बाय ज्वाइनिंग। थैंक यू, थैंक यू, थैंक यू दर्शित, थैंक यू परीक्षित जी, थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू वेरी मच, थैंक यू लियाकत अली जी, थैंक यू, थैंक यू गीत जी, थैंक यू योगेश्वर जी, नमस्कार नमस्कार।
ईश्वर जी।